Okay, so I should be getting some people and we should be starting soon. As always, if you have questions you can post them in the Democracy Gaming podcast server or in the Twitch chat.
Hello?
Hello,
Are we
Fawn?
actually on it?
Yeah, we are on air. I haven't posted the stream yet though.
Hello.
Hello?
Hello. Do you two have any interest in debating each other on any topic really?
What is the topic?
I guess you can pick it
Alright.
yourself.
Do you have a position on elections, Ken?
What do you mean, do I have a position on elections? We should certainly hold them.
On voting methodology. Well, actually, I think the legislature asked the POG to do a survey on public opinions of voting methodologies. I don't think that ever happened, but
Results are still out on that poll, but I'll get on it as soon as I have the chance. I will get my top pollster on it. I will say this.
the poll was produced.
I believe we have a discussion about a poll being produced. I don't believe we actually produced one. I will say this on voting. Domitor has done a lot of work analyzing previous voting in the legislature mostly. And it seems like we have a hidden two-party system. Last election, I know 2 independents run for the legislature and 1 for the ministry candidate being myself, and none of the 3 won. And so I wonder if we have fallen into a de facto two-party system, even though we have 5 or 6 parties or something like that. I would like to spice that up. So I think voting methods should be investigated further, very heavily. I think that POG should maybe start leading the effort. I'm calling on myself to do that. Despite running for the ministry, I will somehow manage to make that happen. Campaign promises 101, I guess. Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah.
Well,
Which are the 2 parties you're referring to?
In Democraciv, the two-party system here is the same 2 parties that we've always seemed to have. It's a pro-war and an anti-war sort of setup is the best understanding I have of it at this point. Domitor did some more analysis last night. I have yet to read it. I've been working on writing it up. Hopefully we will have something on the Reddit within a week, maybe. Yeah, it's not truly 2 parties, right? Like we have 5, but the way the voting happens, the associations make it look like it's 2 parties where there's enough backroom dealing going on to make 2 or 3 parties sort of always go one way and 2 or 3 parties sort of always go the other. And we will have details in a post on this as soon as I have the time to write it up and as soon as Domitor has the time to answer my questions, because I had some questions about what he did that I needed answered before I could actually write things up.
well, I think what he talked
cut
about
out.
was what Dominic talked about was there was a kind of was it Iron Union? Oh no,
It was not. I will say this: Dominor is not politically motivated. What he observed was not politically motivated.
what he observed
he
was that there was a progressive Tao coalition and celestial futurist coalition that kind of are rivals of each other, more or less.
Yeah, more or less. Yeah.
Union people kind of in the middle, and Iron Union kind of in the middle as the pro-war group.
Again, I hesitate to say his findings are conclusive. I think a lot of work needs to be done in that area. I think, historically speaking, as somebody who's been around since Mk4, Democraciv tends to be single-minded in terms of its political spectrum, where it's war versus anti-war, and I would like to avoid that this time. So I am I am doing my best to keep my finger on the pulse as head of the POG and make sure that what Domino is seeing doesn't turn into a true two-party system.
Well, I think what he observed was that there's a split. The vast majority of the population right now, at least, seems to be anti-war, and there's a split among the anti-war people between progressive Tao and celestial futurists.
And just for the record, Thorn is one of the more active members of the POG who actually seems to be useful, contributes a lot of the time. So I trust his opinion at this point. I need to go back and read all this stuff and really think about it carefully. So what he's saying is probably true. Go ahead, you were going to say something.
There's a lot of stuff, progressive, pretty open, that we maintained a relationship. I don't think there's anything wrong with there being alliances between parties.
I certainly don't disagree with that. I think alliances between parties is fine. At the end of the day, Songhai is on our continent. There's going to be a war, and we're going to polarize in that direction. So I just want to try to make that polarization as meaningless as possible. I want to make sure that the party diversity and the party platforms are sort of advocating other things other than just war, and not necessarily just voting together based on war versus not war. We're a long way off, you know?
Have you both been in previous marks?
Previous wars or
marks?
No, I haven't been in previous marks.
But Ken, you have been in previous marks, right?
Yes.
So
yeah.
So comparing to the state of the game now, have war parties traditionally been more powerful than they are now? Because Iron Union is pretty much the only really pro-war party. The others are pacifists and pacifist-light, in my opinion. Is this a sort of a break with the trend that the game has become more pacifist in this mark compared to previous marks?
That is a really tough question to answer. I will say this. We've always seemed to end up at war. Last mark, I ran as president as a peaceful pirate, I guess. Basically against Westgoot, who's a great guy, friend of mine. Westgoot's War is what I like to call it. And I managed to win election a few times. So it was pretty balanced. I don't know if we're just not far enough along this mark or what, but there is not a strong, you're right, there's not a strong war support. It's not quite as balanced. From what I remember from the beginning of the last mark, at the start, there tends to be less war support just because you don't have cannons, right? You don't have the sort of weaponry necessary to actually successfully take cities, so what's the point of actually starting a war? I wonder if this time around we will, as a group collectively, be less war-focused later in the game, just because I feel like we're war-weary. You know, we had a lot of wars during the last two marks. Last mark, it came back to bite us in the ass. Although last mark truly was as war hawkish could get, since we played as Rome with what's that mod?
Vox Populi, I think.
Yeah, Vox Populi, where, you know, Rome has to go to war early on and sort of try to win that way. So I think last mark we were heavily war. I think this mark people are tired of war. I think the war parties will get more support later on. I don't know what side I'll come down on when Songhai actually attacks. When Songhai actually attacks, I don't know if I will be in the camp of people who wants to eliminate them, the camp of people who wants to end the war, the camp of people who just is a complete pacifist. We'll see. I like winning, so we'll see.
So in the the last game I played just this last week, just self-playing based on the settings that we're playing on, but not based on the save file in any way, just using the same settings, same mods. My neighbor was Greece, had friendly relations for a long time, and they launched a surprise war on me. It was hostile with Spain, though, for whatever reason, but Greece was kind of between Spain and me. I was going for basically a technological victory. Greece kind of surprise attacked and got a couple of minor cities, and before I got up forces, and then I took back my cities and took one of their cities that was kind of between the two cities before I gave them peace. They were suing for peace before that. Giving you peace until I have my cities back. City that has a wonder in it too. Once I had my territory back, I was like, peace. And they ended up conquering Spain. And I got my technological victory.
I mean, yeah, Greece can be warlike sometimes. Songhai is notoriously pushy, where we could be friendly with them one day and at war the next. So I feel like war is going to have to happen on our continent.
Question is, how far do we want to take the war? Do we want to eliminate Songhai, or do we want to do the minimum war possible to win the game?
I recently thought about starting an isolationist party, so I'm not the person to ask about that. I honestly think that's a decision for the legislature, not the executive. I think that needs to come from you guys and not us.
I guess I'm staying in the legislature for another term.
Yeah, the Progressive Union hasn't posted the list yet. Are you still holding primaries?
Yes, we're still holding primary. Yeah. Holding primaries.
Who's currently leading in your primaries? What does your ticket look like as of now?
I think Fem American I will be legislative nominee, and Angus Abercrombie is running for ministry.
I don't think Fem America is the best candidate. I've worked with her in the past. She's smart, but she just doesn't have time sometimes.
Hopefully, we have 10 party members, so 10 party members. We have like 5 that want positions, maybe, or whatever, and so yes.
So, how do you guys feel about the elections? What do you think the turnout's going to be?
If I was still running the casino, I'd put the over-under at 35.
35 voters?
Yes.
I'd put the over-under at 55.
I think 70 at least.
What did you say?
70. I don't think we will. I think we will probably drop since we haven't. I don't think the actual party membership stats have changed since the last election. We haven't got any new people. Well,
I don't think.
Yeah, go on.
I don't think party membership is the way that you gauge this sort of thing, right? Like, people are going to stick around with the party membership and the roles much longer than they're actually involved inside a Democraciv. I'm going on historic data. I think 35 is a little bit pessimistic, but I think it's definitely not 70. 55, I think, would be fantastic. 45, maybe. I'm thinking 35 is a pessimistic number, but I don't see it not happening.
Okay.
We have, for the record, we have 2 active judges right now out of however many we appointed. So let that be sort of a guide for you. Look at like legislative voting, how that's gone. It's gone downhill with the number of people actually involved. Even inside the POG, I have 4 or 5 people who are just MIA at this point.
So you say you expect 35 voters in the election, and I can completely dismiss that right away. Because in our Iron Union party primary, we had 16 votes. That's half of that. So if only our party can get half of that, we're going to beat 35 by a pretty large margin.
As long as you all vote for me, I'm happy.
I can't guarantee that, though. Yeah, so which parties do you think will rise or dissolve, or not dissolve, but just go down until they become irrelevant?
I think the Celestes are done. I think this is the election that kind of diminishes them to the point of not irrelevance, but they don't come back, I think, after this. I think this is their final hurrah.
Were they present this past term? They did very poorly in the election. They didn't get a seat on the ministry. And they haven't... I don't think they've done much in the legislature, have they?
Well, their most active members are Espresso, who has disappeared from the POG. Masenko, maybe? Or Solace, one of those two. And they are focused entirely on the economy and doing that and not party stuff. So I just don't know who their leadership is. I don't know who's driving that machine, but if nobody's driving it, it's going to go away.
Yeah, there's Charlie. He's I don't think he's got any other role, but he's a moderator right now. And I don't, except when he's moderator, I haven't seen him pretty much doing anything else. And String has been busy.
Brendo is involved in the religious thing.
Yeah, but not in anything else. And then you got...
He has his philosophy channel, he's not involved in the politics.
They might as well be an independent, and the same with Masenko. They're not involved in the main game, and that's gonna make the party suffer in the election if they aren't actively promoting the party itself and not their side activities.
I assume they had a legislator. They had some legislators. Who were they?
They do have 7 people online right now, so who knows?
Okay, they had Ringlord and Haranock and Celeste. I think Stringlord proposed some legislation.
I think Order of Dao sticks around a little bit longer because Halder will keep them together. I think once Halder gets busy and Solace goes full economy, that might end.
And Union People is mostly, well, they have like 5 people that came in together as a group, I think, or something, that are kind of the core of the party. 5 real life friends, I guess. I don't know.
It's just DOS. Don't pretend it's DOS.
You think Union of the People is DOS?
They're all olds. They're olds, all of them.
How many of them are there?
The loud and uninformed party, I think, will stick around because that's a natural place for casuals to go. There was something... Nuke is going to be like one person or forever, like the Pirate Party tends to be. God bless them too, you know.
Yeah, I expect Nuke to eventually merge with us, because they have already joined our list for this election, and their previous legislator has dropped out, and the only other active, really active member has joined our list. So yeah, we pretty much agree on almost everything regardless.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think we're going to end up in a two-party system, and I think if we're not careful, the two-party system will be war versus anti-war again. You can already see the war parties consolidating. The predictions have been very strongly that anti-war parties are the ones that are going to start to dissolve because of whatever, and then they're going to consolidate, and who knows.
Anti-war parties, there's... well... yeah. There does seem to be a lot of disinterested people in a lot of the anti-war parties.
I think besides...
well, IFP is reasonably active, I think.
Let me link you the candidates list on the wiki I have made. There you can see all the current candidates for this election. And you can also compare them to previous elections and which candidates have run before. And for each election there's pretty much half, or at least a third of the nominees are actually new people who haven't run before. And I think that's a sign of... I don't remember the name for it, but yeah, it's a sign of...
It's growth, right? It's growth.
Yeah, but it's also old people, old candidates are dropping out, becoming inactive, and they're replaced by new people who try to be active instead. So there is it's constantly switching out the old people for new people, while the more older, stable parties have the same people term after term.
You think the Iron Union is going to have the same people?
I mean, we do have me and Retro as 1 and 2. Unfortunately, well, Arch is one of the oldest members, but he's Supreme Justice, and I don't think he's going to change that. And unfortunately, we couldn't get Poseidon to... he's busy, I guess. But yeah, the core, the top of the list, I think for most parties are veterans of each party. But then the lower and middle positions on the list are mostly new people.
I mean, the fact that we have currently 5 people running for the executive for 5 positions is the biggest problem I actually see. Though I assume Westgoot will run at some point.
I don't think he will, because I asked Helder about it, because Helder said he was going to run for executive instead of legislator. Then I asked him, well, isn't West running? I mean, you're unlikely to get 2 of you. It might get the same situation as with the Celestials. You have 2 candidates and you get none elected. So, but then he said they're having a primary, and since West hasn't announced his candidacy and Helder has, I guess West lost and isn't running, or if West going to run as an independent, I don't know.
West would run as an independent just to screw me out of the position.
If you look at the stream or in the audience chat, I linked the current candidacy list, and there you can see if candidates have run in the previous election, and if they won or lost there, and the positions on each party list. It's pretty useful to compare the changes between elections and how parties prioritize, and yeah, you can analyze the data and figure out...
As I said, as of now, the Progressive Union does have a candidate for executive in the running in the primary, where we may get more candidate pick between them, but right now So there will be at least a sixth candidate.
Nah, the Progressive Union should just vote for me. I will be there. No, I will not. I will stay independent, but the Progressive Union should just vote for me.
So if we actually talk about our own positions then, KenLane, as a candidate for the executive, what are you running on? What are your promises and what do you aim to do? And that was my phone, but let's ignore that. What are you running for? What do you intend to achieve?
I've only got a few minutes left, but number one, screenshots will be back when I'm in office. I will not do 100 screenshots, I promise. 20 to 40 max. I'll limit myself. Two, I am going to do my best to help the legislature actually gain some power from the executive. I think that the way that it's been done so far, the executive has far too much power over in-game sorts of things. This debate came up the other day, and I strongly agree the legislature needs to pass bills that give them power back, and I will not be vetoing those bills. And I plan to bring accountability back to the ministry, where the ministry is not going to play the game as the ministry wants to play the game, but I think the ministry will play the game as the people want the ministry to play the game. I am directly accountable to you, not through some party, or I don't have to go back to a party and actually clear what I want to do or my positions. I can just talk to you, the people, and get your input and base everything I do off that.
And how would you judge your own election chances? Do you think you have a shot at winning? Will you win?
Yes, I think I will win. I think there's enough independence and enough support for independence that I can win.
And if party members of other parties would choose to support you instead of their own candidates, or for instance if the Celestials do not field any candidates at all, which parties do you think would support you the most? Their voters, I mean.
I think the loud and uninformed party, maybe. As weird as it sounds, I know they have some sort of a pact, but I think their voters are less tied to their party than most of the other parties. I think Celeste and Dow are going to be very tightly tied to their parties. I think Iron Union's going to be very tightly tied to its party. I suspect I will get a lot of second place votes, and that might help me. But yeah, I think it's the loud and uninformed and the independents that are going to come to my aid.
Fawn, do you have
to turn them out and vote?
What did you say?
Just have to turn them out to vote.
Yeah, exactly. If you only get 35 voters, I mean, I have no idea how that will look like. But Fawn, how many voters did you say you expect?
For the election as a whole?
Yeah, I don't think legislative and executive are separate elections, so the whole, yes.
Right, 55 votes, I said. Seems like a good consensus kind of estimate.
So, with the new additional seats law, 20% of the voters will be seats. That means 11 seats, which is 1 less than the first term and 4 less than currently.
So not to interrupt, but I gotta leave. Have fun, guys. Talk to you later.
Yeah, thanks for coming. So, is there any questions for me, RB, or Fawn here? Or is there anyone else watching who wants to join? Sansu, Warrior, do you want to join? Haldir, where's Haldir? He said he was going to come. Let me ping him. So Fawn, do you have any questions for me on any of our policies, or mine in particular? Do you wish to discuss elections, perhaps? Systems?
What do I want to say about elections? I think that some kind of ranked choice voting is dumb system in the world for official election, but some kind of scoring voting is only used in a lot of other applications that, especially formal, people are having discussion. Strength of opinion is taken into account. Decisions as doing a formal election. I think and a score voting of some kind is common in the
it seems like we have a... Yeah, go on.
People...
Yeah, go on.
People don't have a large stake in, a large personal stake in the winner, where you're trying to get some honest opinions, like rating products or rating gymnasts or divers or figure skaters. A lot of when you're trying to get people's honest opinion, frequent score some variation score voting opposed to ranked voting. Your ratings, hot or not, whatever. Assign each person photo a score from 1 to 10 or whatever, and the attractiveness. There's a big recommendation not to use the range 1 to, because that confused voters that think 5 is the midpoint, and they tend to overuse 5. Compromise vote. The midpoint is actually 5.5, right? 5 votes below, 5 votes above. But if you write it as 0 to 9, people understand the midpoint is 4.5. You don't get that awkward midpoint effect, but anyway, the point is, it's used for a lot of things. Hasn't been used much in major elections. Approval voting is the most basic form of it. Again, used by any governments, although we use it for our cabinet election, the legislature, 0 to 1 rating. And the advantage is that with range voting, the vote for one candidate doesn't really hurt another candidate, although in the reweighted range voting, where you are trying to achieve proportional representation, you do get more complicated effects of votes. But in ranked choice voting, strategy can have very predictable impacts. Strategically, increasing the rating of one candidate can lead to another candidate doing better or doing worse. Ranked choice voting in score voting methods generally, for the most part, all the score changes work as expected. If you increase someone's score, you make them more likely to win. If you decrease someone's score, you make them less likely to win. Score changes do what you expect them to do.
That's the advantage of a score point system. It's easy to use, it's easy to understand. You give a point, you combine the points, and highest point wins. It's as simple as first past the post, but you got multiple points instead.
Mm-hmm. Although this goes by average points, and then to have multiple winners, it reweights the value of points based on existing winners so that it guarantees proportionality, that a minority of the population can elect a candidate even when they're not, even when the majority is uniformly opposed to that candidate.
So we had a question from chat, actually, from Archwizard. Fawn, how much power do you want to give to the legislature? Sorry if it's a repeated question. I don't think it is. Not in this podcast, at least. How much power do you want to give the legislature?
I've been pretty opposed to legislative power. I think that the ministry should be running the game, should be running the military particularly, and making decisions based on in-game factors to optimize the running of the country. The day-to-day business of the country should be handled by the ministry, and the legislature should only be setting general policy. So setting general policy goals, declarations of war, as routinely is in real life, although the United States Congress has tended to neglect their duty to declare war and allowed the executive to engage in undeclared war pretty much consistently, is a function of the legislature. And setting policies, if I don't think, well, I guess in real life the other major function of the legislature that we don't have in the game is setting a budget. I don't know if that's something we could reproduce. That's something that I'd be willing to support, some kind of budgeting law where
we have seen something like that in the Fiscal Responsibility Act, that the executive can't go purchase a building or unit if it goes below 100 gold, and they can never go below a deficit of 5 gold per turn and such. How do you think about building upon that system?
Maybe. What a budgeting act would be we allocate so much gold per turn towards military construction, so much or whatever. So much faith per turn toward whatever, or, well, I think the main budgeting would be with gold. Yeah, we could say 10% of the gold earned should be reserved for military and or whatever, as opposed to specific building construct 3 composite bowmen or whatever would not be something that I would see as part of the duties of the legislature.
Art Wizard asked another question. After you finished answering, how much should the ministry influence the legislator's policy?
I think it's great for the legislature to get input from the ministry on selecting policies, input on, discuss with the ministry what a reasonable policy would be, and also get input from the ministry on what they need. Specifically designing reasonable policy. I know we've had a lot of legislation that has been at least co-written by members of the executive. I think that's perfectly fine.
So going back to what you said, you think the legislator's role is to only be a sort of guiding authority, only set the sort of guidelines for how the executive should act, but every major decision should be the executive's. Is that right?
Yeah. Sure.
Then my question is, wouldn't that ruin a supposed balance between the branches? That there is a sort of 50-50 split between them, that while the executive plays the game and does a sort of majority of the short notice decision, that the legislature still does the more long-term, more broad decision making about we should pursue that and that foreign policy goal. We should be friendly towards that civ and hostile towards the other. That they have their specific roles and that they balance each other. Wouldn't that be sort of ruined if you give too much of the power to the executive?
The budgeting proposal would give a lot of power to the legislature, and they could allocate 100% of the gold towards diplomacy if they wanted, and the only gold could be spent on gifts to other city-states or nations. Or whatever. And the legislature does have the power to prohibit a certain action or require a certain action. I don't think that's something that the legislature should be doing routinely. If I'm not sure. Denouncing, I guess, is something the legislature could do, but I don't all denounce to go through the legislature. The legislature could pass a law saying that the ministry may, with a 4 out of 5 vote, along those lines. But I think denouncing is, and most diplomatic activity is more a routine function of the executive that should be handled usually through the executive.
Let me bring up this scenario though. Let's say you got a pacifist, isolationist, more diplomatic majority in the legislature. Then you got a more interventionist, maybe a pro-domination majority in the executive. Now the executive goes off to denounce and ruin a bunch of relations with other civs. They put units on the borders, they want to get them to back off. The executive won't, and the legislator is in complete opposition to this. They want good relations, they want to pull back the troops, but they can't do anything about it since the executive got all the in-game detailed power to make those decisions. So in what way, if any, should the legislator have the ability to force the executive to adhere to their beliefs instead?
Well, there's no restrictions on the legislature's ability to impeach. And they can also pass laws, as I said. They can pass laws more or less about anything. I think as a matter of policy, the laws should generally be more general guidance rather than specific, but pass a law that no unit shall be within so many tiles of foreign power or specific foreign power or whatever, unless we're at war or something. And we already have the law that the legislature has exclusive power to declare war, can be attacked, creates a war without declaration by us, or have someone else declare war on. And the legislature could pass a law stating under what conditions a denouncement would be appropriate. I think that would be more appropriate than having the legislature specifically vote on whether to denounce specific people in the game. Saying, well, do we if someone gets caught spying on us, do we denounce? That's something the legislature could say. Pass a law on that we shall denounce anyone who gets caught spying on us, or we shall forgive anyone who gets caught spying.
But then, I think have you been aware about last night's and these few days controversy regarding the ministry vetoes and their lack of willingness to accept anything that regulates them, even the tiniest bit? You're aware of that?
The ministry?
Yeah, for example, the Physical Responsibility Act. They vetoed it with, of 3 voting so far, 3 have voted no. And that goes for 2 other bills as well. And they have previously vetoed bills with the arguments that they are too restricting to their ability to pick for themselves. It's too micromanagement. It's it's too, yeah, it interferes with their ability to choose. They don't want to have this legislative oversight and regulation on what they have to do. And as I said, they have vetoed this, and they can veto this. So if the legislature made now I think we actually have a law that says that the legislature can denounce other countries without having the executive approving it. But let's say another foreign policy thing, that the legislator wants a trade deal to improve their relations with this particular civ. The executive doesn't want that. They rather go to war with that country, so they veto it. And the legislature doesn't have enough vote to override that veto. So by default, the executive gets the upper hand and can deny any foreign policy stance that doesn't have a really high approval rating in the legislature. Doesn't that a bit unfairly...
The difference between 50% and 2/3 in the legislature is pretty small.
Yeah, but 2/3,
that's 2/3 a lot of them.
That's a lot of people having to be on the same side. I made the argument that for there to be 2/3 approval, it has to be uncontroversial. It has to be some sort of economic reform to the marketplace. It has to be some sort of procedure reform. If it's a sort of if it's a bit controversial, like social policy pick or foreign policy, then I see it it can be quite a bit difficult to get that override veto if you aren't really united behind something, and that pushes the balance into the executive favors by default. Personally, I don't like that, but what's your stance on it?
The three kind of by default has more power because they can veto and keep doing what they're doing for a week after the legislature act. Legislature 2/3 to override a veto.
Yeah, but
kind of how real world works.
But not in every country though. We had some PMs about the proportional and single member. The world isn't united. The world has a bunch of different systems and way of doing things. And the same with vetoes. In a lot of parliamentary systems where you don't have a powerful president or a powerful executive, the power doesn't lie in a separation of powers, a balance between the executive and the parliament. The power often in parliamentary system, the power lies within the parliament and its supreme authority. So you can get anything passed with a majority because that's a majority of the people. Sometimes you maybe have an upper house who can veto the bill and you need 67% or such. But in some countries,
most parliament
you
systems have a prime minister who works as the head of government who does the day-to-day business.
Yeah, they have, but they can't veto the parliament.
Prime minister can be removed with a 50% vote.
Yeah, but they can't veto the laws. So they also always have to follow the laws. Sure, they can provide input and say we don't recommend this law, we advise against this law, don't vote on this law, but they can't stop people from voting the law even if it's going to hurt them. I mean, in the US, the president has a veto, here we have a veto, but in a lot of countries you don't. So, so we don't have to have a veto. So, should we keep the veto, or what do you think?
I don't know that the veto is necessary. I don't have that strong of an opinion one way or the other. I'm okay with it. Working okay, but really think it's...
I mean, previously you supported an overall strong executive, and a veto power would make it comparatively pretty strong against the legislative, but you're fine with or without an veto, but you still want it to do most of the hard work and on the ground work, so to say.
As a matter of policy, I think the executive should be the one playing the game generally. The legislature should be engaged in making policy. I think everyone kind of understands that. I don't think I don't know that the veto is necessary to maintain a healthy balance of power, and I acknowledge your argument that the veto actually unfairly increases the power of the executive. The legislature shouldn't pass micromanaging laws, and I previously proposed and voted for laws to repeal laws that I saw as micromanaging and trying to give powers back to the executive, specifically regarding when to build the paper maker or whatever in cities and cities, and allowing them to name units in cities. Don't think the marketplace has yet, at least last I saw, I don't think they have exercised their in-game powers. As a member of we're both members of the Finance Committee, but we provided a guidelines document to the Triumvirate. No, you're not KenLane. You're RB. Okay.
I hope you didn't thought I was KenLane all along.
No. Yes, I was thinking... Yeah. About KenLane when I said we both were on the finance. RB.
You keep cutting off in parts, so can you repeat what you said? The last sentence?
I said that when I said that we were both members of the Finance Committee, I was thinking of you as KenLane, and I'm like, that was a mistake.
Yeah. So, how is the Finance Committee going? Is it doing its job? Are you happy with the economy working as it is?
I think we tried to before the last game session, we tried to get out some procedures to allow the marketplace to do in-game purchases, and three of us were there, and we made some procedures and posted them. and that set off a big debate, and there was a lot of discussion about procedures, and came up with a new set of much more detailed procedures that I think are very solid, with a nice discussion, and replace the previous procedures with new procedures, are more detailed, and I hope the triumvirate is able to implement those procedures in time for this weekend, and get the marketplace working on the in-game level.
Okay, so how many are actually in the economy? How many, if you know this information, how many active people are in the economy using it and such?
I want to say that there are 50 people using the economy. Although
How many of those would be active though, and not just member of the server?
I'm not sure. There's 53 on the Reddit and 42 on the Discord server. No, there's 20 actually on the Reddit subscribed, but I think there's 53 that have opened an account, I think.
What's the subreddit's name? What is...
It's Democraciv Reddit. Democraciv Marketplace, sorry. r/democracy. Post a link in the chat if you want.
Oh, latest post is 17 days ago. That doesn't look good. I hope the Discord is more active than this.
Has there been anything in a week? Okay, there was Friday. Friday there was a deal between My Name is Immaterial and Sun Tzu on the Discord regarding 10 food for 60 gold. Yeah. Yes, there hasn't been anything in 3 or 4 days.
So...
regarding the marketplace, any activity?
I mean, is it a success or is it sort of a... can it be considered a failure? What do you think?
My hope is that once the triumvirate announces sales of unit city names, and I think right now what there is unit and city names, that will encourage activity and get it working. We have the marketplace exists. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there any other topic you would wish to discuss?
So war versus peace. So you think it's beneficial to preemptively attack Songhai?
I think it's a part of our destiny, really. It's a part of our, at least our parties and perhaps even our countries or civilizations' ultimate goal to expand, to get more powerful, to unite our continent and later on the entire world. I think
you're in favor of a domination.
Ken, are you back, or have you been in the chat all along?
I am back. I had a meeting.
Okay. Well, welcome back. So, a domination victory. I mean, my party wants a domination victory. I can support that. I mean, I'm not. It's not that I'm against domination victory and want something else. It's not that. It's that I consider role playing more important than the victory in itself. I think we should make our own goals, role play according to those. If our goal is to, for example, conquer an entire continent, a couple of civilizations, get nice borders, and get 100 units in the world's largest army, I think we should do that. And if we consider that a victory instead of the game's official victories, I think that is just as good. I don't think we should put too much focus on what the game considers us to be a victory, and we should consider what we want out of the game as a role-playing experience. That's my view. And Ken, you're free to jump in at any time if you want.
I want a cultural victory. I will not be happy until the world is snorting our cocaine, watching our TV, and looking at our art. I want the world to be in love with us.
We need to spread those Chinese pop music and those jeans to everyone.
Opium for everybody. Everybody gets a free opium every time they do anything.
That's also.
I'm not against. I'm not against domination.
When you win the lottery, you get 1 million pounds of opium.
Only 1 million? That's only going to last me like a week, guys. Come on. Seriously. It's me.
Anyway.
The real question is, when I am minister, can I stay in charge of the POG? I think that's got to be a public decision and not my decision.
I don't see any conflict between being a minister and in charge of the POG.
I was going to ask, is there any dual mandate laws against that currently? But then I thought about your parish actually being the attorney general and the head of his gentry while being minister, so I don't think so. It's more a moral choice than it is a legal choice at the moment.
And again, because it's a moral choice, that's why I would throw it back to the people more so than making a decision myself.
Although, I guess it didn't happen. I think Sean Box has now been appointed Constable General, head of the Gentry of Investigation, and he indicated that he would resign from the Supreme Court. That's a kind of obvious conflict. But I'm not sure if he officially did, and at the end of this week that becomes moot.
I haven't heard
Because
much of anything from him, really.
He's a reliable guy. He's around. He's paying attention, but I don't think he posts a lot. That's the thing. He's been here longer than I have. He's usually informed, just maybe not the most active on the Discord.
I mean, we got people like Soles, like Masenko, and like the Celestial guy's name, which you can't pronounce, who's in the religious and the others in the economy, who are... I'm not that much into those things, but I think they're active, but they're not into the main game, so you don't see their activity. And as with the court, they're probably active within the court, in the private chats, in PMs and such, but you don't see that publicly. And with a lot of people, most of the activity is going on in party servers, perhaps, so you don't see the activity of many people who otherwise are really active. Just not in public.
And there's Ravis is active in public. Tiberius and Archwizard, I guess, and yeah, maybe the members of the court now. Who are we supporting for Supreme Court? Do we want to reappoint the existing members? Well, at least some of them.
Archer, you're still watching us. Thumbs up to that. He was posting a heart in chat. So I think it was for the court. I think Joe Bob, our minister, made a candidacy nomination for Sykes Panic from famous from Democraciv Universalis, DU. He nominated him. I think that was for the court.
I think Joe Parrish is running for the court.
Is he?
Yes.
Is he leaving ministry?
Yes. His term in ministry is ending, but yeah.
I guess it's because of the inactivity with him being busy with his job and such. He can't be active in the ministry. Yeah, I think well, the court should be some at least semi-active at least, but it doesn't have to be as active as the minister and legislator. It can have a calmer tempo, and it can take more time without it being too detrimental to the game.
Have we had any court decisions in the last 4 weeks?
No, it's been a very quiet 4 weeks. I almost got sued though.
Yes, I heard.
I actually submitted...
RB is wanting to sue someone, right?
No,
or trying...
not really. That was a joke.
Oh,
but
okay.
I was a bit pissed about that. But I guess we all throw dirt at each other at times. But I did submit a case this week actually to the court, and they haven't been public about it yet.
What is the case?
It was about executive voting procedures. Now we overturned the veto with exactly 67% of the vote for the Additional Seats Act.
A third, yeah.
But I was arguing that it should have passed regularly, since it did pass the legislator, and the reason for that, it took almost a week and it almost auto-passed. It was like 10 hours before it auto-passed. It got denied, but I was arguing that it should have passed the executive, because I think it was 2 in favor and 2 against the law. Mm-hmm. And then Fruity gave the final vote, and surprisingly, it was a yes. I thought he would be voting no. I thought it would be damn, since Joe Parrish didn't support us, but he supported it. That was 3-2 to pass the law. And then everyone has voted. It's almost been a week. It's almost gonna auto-pass. Shouldn't the law pass then? I was thinking.
I thought it was 2-2 with Joe Bob abstaining and then changing it to an A at the last minute. But
yeah, he was voting in favor, so it was 2-2, and with Fruity it became 3-2. But then Joe changed his vote to no, so it was 3-2 to no instead. But if everyone had voted, it had almost been a week. Shouldn't the vote have closed immediately when Fruity voted?
So he changed his vote to an abstain and then to a nay?
I mean,
Joe Bob?
I think as Fruity, the final minister, had voted, the vote should have been closed. And then if Joe Bob changed his vote after the vote had closed, it shouldn't have counted. He can't change it.
Do you think Joe Bob changed his vote based on party decisions or based on his own choice?
His own choice, definitely. Because, well, the Iron Union stance, both me and Reto, we rarely agree on laws, but both of us supported the legislative expansion, and so did Job. Then Joe suddenly says, school is starting, people will be busy, let's veto it instead, at the last minute. And I think that was pretty dishonest and really unpredictable of him.
He's not wrong. I noticed undergrads were around today. I think I pushed one of them over.
I don't think there was ever a decision on the Selenko versus Ministry case.
Which one is that?
The suing them for violating the law that we then repealed by naming a unit. They named a unit when the law said they should refrain from.
I think they just made a warning, then didn't take it any further.
The executive basically said, we're guilty, and
The executive has the most power in games, so they have to be held to the highest standard, and they are the ones who actually need to be sued the most, right? Like, if you're not coming down hard on them, you give them an inch, they're going to take a mile. They're a 17-year-old boy on prom night. They don't know how to control themselves.
Yeah, I was talking with Fawn about the legislative, the executive balance, that the executive, they want to keep as much power as possible, even the tiniest bit of regulation from the legislators to make more sense, to make the executive more responsible. They will veto it. It's too much micromanagement. They want as much freedom they possibly can get, so they veto everything that puts some kind of responsibility or additional requirement on them. And yeah, exactly. They don't want to cooperate with the legislator. They just want to do as much as they can themselves without involving the others.
so KenLane. RB was asking me earlier if I supported a repeal of the serial veto. I said yes. What's your opinion? The veto power.
I disagree.
Why do you think vetoes are important?
I think you guys can write some really shitty laws.
Well, that's a legislative problem, writing shitty laws.
I think you guys can vote on some really shitty laws and vote in favor of some really shitty laws without necessarily Like, there needs to be a second set of eyes going over everything that you all have voted on, because it may sound really good when you're talking to each other. But then when I read it, I might be like, no, this is just wrong. This is bad. This is incorrect. And in that case, bad laws are worse than bad vetoes, I think, because you can overturn a veto. It seems more hard to overturn a law.
I think we're back to the committee proposal by that point, that instead of having the laws pass the legislator and then have the executive take a look on it, that laws only pass inside the legislature. But you have two instances. First you have the committee who focus on a particular topic of laws, for example military laws, financial laws, social laws, whatever, and we have a bunch of representatives from each party taking a look on the bill, giving their input, trying to approve it, trying to get this as wide as possible of support to get it passed, and then it goes to vote over the entire legislature, and that's an extra check without having the executive involved. I think that's a better system than having the executive have a veto, and yeah.
I don't disagree that is a decent system. I think the beauty of the executive being able to veto is it goes outside the legislature completely. I do think this is a set of checks and balances that works. It's something we've always sort of had. There's always been a veto over the legislature that's been held by the executive. Could we change that? Yeah. Would I support changing that or veto changing that? I don't know. It depends on what I read and what I see that you guys produce. I'm not an ideologue. I am not an executive power type of person. I am here trying to, I guess I'm really just trying to make sure we win the game, make sure that we have cooperation and understanding across all sorts of borders. And I think understanding across the legislature and the executive is an important thing that seems to apparently be missing these days. So I don't know. I don't know what the perfect system is. I know the system that we have. I know that the legislature does not always write the best laws. I have read many laws and just been cringing as I get through them, and I've seen some of those pass, and I have to shoot those down. I have to do my job to make sure you guys don't do something stupid.
I mean, it became so heated yesterday that I even advocated removing the ministry entirely, but without going that far, we can do some ministry veto reforms. For example, we can raise the limit requirement to have 4 out of 5 ministers.
I think a 4 out of 5 veto is a good compromise. I think if you made it a 4 out of 5 veto, I would support that.
I think to change the veto, we would need a constitutional amendment, which means we could do that without going through the ministry, but we would need to send something to a general referendum that I guess if we call a session this week, we could still do if we hurry up. Include that as a referendum on the election ballot, and get it passed with, what does an amendment need? 2/3 majority or
only 50?
No idea. Never read the Constitution.
It's actually only 50, if you can believe that.
I'm still waiting on a picture book version.
Yeah, we need that emote version. But another way of doing it would be sort of having a gradual veto, that if 3/5 of the ministry veto, then it has to go back to the legislator, but then it's a 55% vote to get it passed. And if 4/5 veto it, then it's the regular 67% veto.
Well, already there's frequently not a difference between a majority vote in the legislature and a 2/3 majority. Like if we go down to 9 ministers, a majority is 2/3 majority.
No, a majority of 9 is not 2/3.
Oh, sorry. A majority is 5 and 2/3 is 6. That's right. Only be with 3.
Carry the 2.
We often, for a lot of business in the legislature, we have a 2/3 majority. I don't think reducing the threshold from 2/3 to 55% makes a significant difference. But I would support 4 out of 5 to veto in the ministry. I think that's a very good compromise.
Yeah, I think it would decrease the amount of vetoes. I mean, you still could have 3 out of 5 to approve the law immediately, but then it always auto-passes a week anyway, so unless you get 4 out of 5, you can't delay, or wait, you can delay it, but you can't really stop it from happening otherwise. But another, except the requirements and 4/5 and that, there's also talk about changing the nature of the veto. For example, the original intent of the American veto by the president is that you could veto laws on the basis that they were unconstitutional, that they didn't fit into already existing laws, they went against the ideals of the country and such. What if we limited vetoes only to the worst offenders, the worst bills that went against democracy and fairness and all that, and not just what we mildly disliked?
Part of the problem is also judging intent, right? Like, you guys might write a bad law that you don't intend to go against democracy, but I can see an exploitable hole in it. Like, at that point, there was no intention to subvert democracy, but should I still veto that?
I mean, practice has to come before theory in this case. That if the practical consequences is likely that it will go bad, then you have to veto it. But if you have to base it on the likely consequences, not just well, we hope it will work out fine, but Ars just asked in chat, is the intent of the legislator relevant? Yeah, I think you may have good intentions, but you have to think about the consequences, even if they're unintended, and vote on that.
At the end of the day, the best solution is just to vote for people who you trust to not abuse the power of the veto, and I think I've done everything in my power to show you that I am not somebody who's going to abuse that. Vote for me. Watch. I'm not going to veto laws just because I don't like them. It's going to be, you wrote something stupid, and I will give you a reason for why I vetoed. Don't vote down your party line, right? Like, find the people who you actually trust.
To be going to do other things. Thanks for the debate. Good luck finding people to join your stream.
Yeah, thanks for coming and being here as always. So IFP might be coming later, but I think we will take a break until then.
I may or may not be back. I have some work I need to do, so it was nice coming on and talking to you. Always a pleasure anytime you want.
Yeah, thanks for coming. Great to have you here. So, Thorn and Ken left. I guess the viewers will leave too then. But before you do that, we can't promise it, but we might be returning in an hour or two, or if we get any people willing to get on the air right now. You can find the link to the Democracy Gaming Podcast server in the propaganda channel of Leon the Bank server. You can ask for the link in Twitch chat, or I can post it there. If you want to be on air, I can invite you. And otherwise, there might be a follow-up, a part 2 with the IFP and maybe someone else in a couple of hours. At most in 2 hours time. Hopefully before then. These Americans are still in school, still at work. We'll see. Anyway, thanks for now, and time to be biased. Don't forget to vote on the Iron Union. We are the only true opposition. But to be unbiased, pick whatever you want, as long as we are democracy. Thanks for watching.